Question 1. Research into the implementation of a new enterprise-wide unified access solution reveals that it will collect and store user authentication logs, including timestamps, IP addresses, and successful/failed login attempts. The enterprise operates within the United States and is subject to various federal and state data privacy laws. Which of the following approaches best ensures regulatory compliance for the collection and handling of this authentication log data? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of applicable U.S. federal and state data privacy laws to determine specific requirements for log data collection, retention, and user notification, and design the unified access solution to meet these requirements, including obtaining legal counsel's approval. Option B. Rely on the implicit consent of users to data collection by virtue of them using the enterprise network, and store logs indefinitely to ensure comprehensive historical data. Option C. Implement the collection and storage of authentication logs as per standard IT security best practices, assuming that general data security measures are sufficient for compliance. Option D. Prioritize the collection of the most granular log data possible to maximize forensic capabilities in case of a security incident, without specific consideration for data privacy regulations. Correct answer is C. Implement the collection and storage of authentication logs as per standard IT security best practices, assuming that general data security measures are sufficient for compliance. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the technical imperative of network security and access control with the legal and regulatory obligations concerning data privacy and user consent. The challenge lies in implementing a unified access solution that not only enforces security policies, but also adheres to the specific data protection regulations applicable to the enterprise's operating jurisdiction. A failure to do so can result in significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive understanding and implementation of the relevant regulatory framework. Specifically, it involves a proactive engagement with legal counsel and privacy officers to ensure that the design and deployment of the unified access solution are fully compliant with data privacy laws. This includes understanding what constitutes personal data, obtaining appropriate consent for data collection and processing, and implementing robust security measures to protect that data. This aligns with the principles of privacy by design and by default, which are often mandated by data protection regulations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical security features without considering data privacy implications would fail to meet regulatory requirements. For instance, collecting and storing user authentication logs without a clear legal basis, or without informing users about the purpose and duration of storage could violate data protection principles. Similarly, implementing access controls that inadvertently grant access to sensitive personal data to unauthorized personnel, or failing to provide users with the right to access or rectify their data, would constitute a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Another incorrect approach might be to assume that general security best practices are sufficient, without verifying their alignment with specific jurisdictional data protection laws, leading to noncompliance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multidisciplinary approach. First, clearly define the scope of the unified access solution and the types of data it will handle. Second, consult with legal and compliance teams to identify all applicable regulations. Third, design the solution with privacy and security as core requirements, incorporating mechanisms for consent management, data minimization, and access control that are compliant. Fourth, conduct thorough testing and audits to ensure ongoing adherence to both technical and regulatory standards. Finally, establish clear policies and procedures for data handling and incident response. Question 2. Quality control measures reveal that several employees have begun connecting personal devices to the corporate network without prior authorization or security vetting. The network administrator is under pressure to restore full network access for these users immediately to minimize disruption to their work. Which of the following actions best addresses this situation while adhering to enterprise network security principles? Option A. Implement a mandatory, documented risk assessment process for all new devices connecting to the network, including a review of security configurations and potential vulnerabilities before granting full access. Option B. Block all newly connected devices from the network until a formal policy review can be completed, which may take several weeks. Option C. Allow temporary limited network access for newly connected devices, with the understanding that full access will be granted without further assessment once the initial backlog of user requests is cleared. Option D. Grant immediate full network access to all newly connected devices to avoid productivity loss and address any security concerns retrospectively as they arise. The correct answer is A. Implement a mandatory documented risk assessment process for all new devices connecting to the network, including a review of security configurations and potential vulnerabilities, before granting full access. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because the network administrator must balance the immediate need for network access with the long-term security implications of unmanaged devices. The core of the challenge lies in the potential for unauthorized access and data breaches stemming from devices that have not undergone a formal risk assessment. Adhering to the principles of enterprise network security, particularly within the context of unified access, requires a proactive and systematic approach to risk management. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the identified risk by implementing a controlled process for evaluating and mitigating potential security vulnerabilities before granting full network access. This aligns with the fundamental tenets of network security and compliance, which mandate a thorough understanding of all connected endpoints. By requiring a risk assessment, the administrator ensures that the organization's security posture is not compromised by the introduction of unknown or inadequately secured devices. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining the integrity and confidentiality of enterprise data. An incorrect approach that bypasses the risk assessment process for expediency would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Such a failure could lead to noncompliance with data protection regulations, e.g., GDPR if applicable to the exam's implied jurisdiction, though we are strictly adhering to the exam scope, which does not specify a jurisdiction beyond the exam itself, thus focusing on general best practices within enterprise networking. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for the organization's responsibility to protect its data and the data of its stakeholders. Allowing unassessed devices onto the network creates an environment ripe for security incidents, potentially resulting in financial losses, reputational damage, and legal liabilities. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This framework typically includes identifying assets and threats, assessing vulnerabilities, analyzing risks, evaluating the likelihood and impact of potential security incidents, and implementing appropriate controls. In this context, the risk assessment is the critical control mechanism. Professionals should prioritize security and compliance over immediate convenience, always seeking to understand and mitigate potential risks before making decisions that could impact the organization's security posture. This involves consulting relevant internal policies, industry best practices, and any applicable regulatory guidelines that govern network security and data handling. Question 3. The assessment process reveals that the current risk assessment methodology for the enterprise network is primarily based on a single, comprehensive review conducted annually, with minimal updates between these periods. This approach has been in place for several years. Which of the following adjustments to the risk assessment process would best enhance its effectiveness and align with modern cybersecurity best practices? Option A. Implement a continuous risk assessment framework that incorporates automated monitoring of network changes and threat intelligence feeds, supplemented by quarterly in-depth reviews and ad hoc assessments triggered by significant events. Option B. Adopt a standardized, off-the-shelf risk assessment template that is widely recognized in the industry, without significant customization for the organization's specific environment. Option C. Increase the frequency of the annual review to twice a year, while maintaining the same methodology and scope for each review. Option D. Focus the annual review exclusively on identifying and documenting the most critical technical vulnerabilities, assuming that all other risks are of lower priority. The correct answer is A. Implement a continuous risk assessment framework that incorporates automated monitoring of network changes and threat intelligence feeds, supplemented by quarterly in-depth reviews and ad hoc assessments triggered by significant events. Explanation: The assessment process reveals a critical need to evaluate the effectiveness of existing risk assessment methodologies within an enterprise network. This scenario is professionally challenging because the rapid evolution of network technologies and the increasing sophistication of cyber threats necessitate a dynamic and adaptive approach to risk management. A static or outdated risk assessment framework can lead to a false sense of security, leaving the organization vulnerable to unforeseen or underestimated threats. Careful judgment is required to select a methodology that is not only comprehensive, but also practical and sustainable for the organization's specific context. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it aligns with the principles of proactive and continuous risk management, which are implicitly and explicitly encouraged by regulatory frameworks governing data security and network integrity. A methodology that emphasizes regular review and updates ensures that the risk assessment remains relevant and effective in identifying and mitigating emerging threats. This proactive stance is crucial for demonstrating due diligence and maintaining compliance with evolving security standards. An incorrect approach that relies solely on historical data without considering future trends or emerging vulnerabilities fails to meet the professional standard of care. This can lead to regulatory or ethical failures by neglecting the duty to protect sensitive information and maintain a secure network infrastructure. Such an approach may also violate specific guidelines that mandate forward-looking risk assessments, potentially resulting in non-compliance penalties. Another incorrect approach that focuses only on technical vulnerabilities without considering the business impact of a security incident overlooks a critical dimension of risk. This can lead to misallocation of resources, where significant technical risks with minor business consequences are prioritized over smaller technical risks with catastrophic business implications. Ethically, this demonstrates a failure to adequately protect the organization's assets and reputation. A third incorrect approach that uses a generic, one-size-fits-all risk assessment template without tailoring it to the organization's unique network architecture, business processes, and threat landscape is also professionally unacceptable. This lack of customization can result in the identification of irrelevant risks or the omission of critical, organization-specific threats, leading to ineffective risk mitigation strategies and potential breaches of regulatory obligations related to data protection and operational resilience. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the organization's business objectives, its technology stack, its regulatory obligations, and the current threat landscape. Professionals should then evaluate various risk assessment methodologies against these factors, prioritizing those that offer a balance of comprehensiveness, adaptability, and practicality. A continuous improvement mindset, incorporating feedback loops and regular reevaluation, is essential for maintaining an effective risk management program. Question 4. Which approach would be most effective for an enterprise network security team to proactively identify and prioritize potential threats in a rapidly growing organization, ensuring alignment with regulatory compliance and efficient resource allocation? Option A. Focusing security efforts solely on the most visible or frequently reported security incidents, without a systematic evaluation of other potential risks. Option B. Conducting a comprehensive risk assessment only after a significant security breach has occurred to learn from past mistakes. Option C. Implementing a continuous, iterative risk assessment methodology that prioritizes threats based on their potential impact and likelihood, integrating findings into security strategy and resource allocation. Option D. Relying on the IT security team's intuition and experience to identify and address the most pressing security concerns as they arise. The correct answer is C. Implementing a continuous, iterative risk assessment methodology that prioritizes threats based on their potential impact and likelihood, integrating findings into security strategy and resource allocation. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise network security, balancing the need for robust risk assessment with the practical constraints of resource allocation and operational efficiency. The organization is experiencing rapid growth, which inherently increases its attack surface and the potential impact of security incidents. Without a structured and comprehensive risk assessment, the IT security team risks making reactive, rather than proactive, security decisions. This can lead to misallocation of resources, overlooking critical vulnerabilities, and ultimately failing to meet regulatory compliance obligations. The correct approach involves a systematic and iterative process that prioritizes risks based on their potential impact and likelihood. This aligns with best practices in information security management and is often a requirement for regulatory compliance frameworks. By focusing on identifying, analyzing, and evaluating risks, the organization can develop targeted mitigation strategies that are both effective and cost-efficient. This proactive stance ensures that security investments are directed towards the most significant threats, thereby strengthening the overall security posture and demonstrating due diligence to regulatory bodies. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on anecdotal evidence or the most visible security incidents. This reactive strategy fails to provide a holistic view of the organization's risk landscape. It can lead to a whack-a-mole approach to security, where resources are constantly shifted to address immediate threats without addressing underlying systemic weaknesses. This is professionally unacceptable, as it demonstrates a lack of structured risk management, potentially leading to non-compliance with data protection regulations that mandate a risk-based approach to security. Another incorrect approach is to conduct a risk assessment only when a major incident occurs. This is fundamentally flawed because it implies that risk assessment is a post-mortem activity rather than a continuous process. It fails to identify and mitigate risks before they can be exploited, leaving the organization vulnerable and potentially facing significant financial and reputational damage, which would be a clear breach of ethical responsibilities and regulatory expectations for ongoing security management. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the organization's business objectives and critical assets. This is followed by a comprehensive identification of potential threats and vulnerabilities. The next step is to analyze the likelihood and impact of these risks, leading to their evaluation and prioritization. Finally, appropriate mitigation strategies are developed and implemented, with a continuous monitoring and review process to adapt to evolving threats and business changes. This structured approach ensures that risk management is integrated into the organization's operations and strategic planning. Question 5. The review process indicates that the enterprise network's current risk assessment methodology is proving inefficient and is not adequately identifying emerging threats. Which of the following approaches would best address these shortcomings while adhering to best practices for enterprise network security? Option A. Develop a risk assessment process based on informal discussions with IT staff and recent security incident reports, without a defined methodology. Option B. Transition to a purely quantitative risk assessment model, requiring detailed financial impact calculations for every potential threat scenario before any mitigation is considered. Option C. Focus exclusively on achieving compliance with the latest industry standards, ensuring all documented controls meet minimum regulatory benchmarks. Option D. Implement a qualitative risk assessment framework that prioritizes threats based on likelihood and impact, mapping identified risks to existing security controls for mitigation planning. The correct answer is D. Implement a qualitative risk assessment framework that prioritizes threats based on likelihood and impact, mapping identified risks to existing security controls for mitigation planning. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise network security, balancing the need for robust risk assessment with the practical constraints of resource allocation and the dynamic nature of threats. The challenge lies in selecting a risk assessment methodology that is both comprehensive enough to identify significant vulnerabilities and efficient enough to be implemented effectively within the organization's operational framework. A superficial or overly complex approach can lead to misallocation of resources, missed critical risks, or an inability to act on findings. Correct approach analysis. Adopting a qualitative risk assessment methodology that prioritizes threats based on their likelihood and potential impact, and then maps these to existing security controls, represents best professional practice. This approach aligns with the principles of effective risk management by focusing on the most probable and damaging threats first. It allows for a structured yet adaptable evaluation, enabling the IT security team to identify high-priority areas for mitigation without getting bogged down in exhaustive, potentially unmanageable, quantitative data. This aligns with the spirit of regulatory frameworks that emphasize a risk-based approach to security, ensuring that resources are directed where they are most needed to protect sensitive enterprise data and infrastructure. Incorrect approach is analysis, One incorrect approach would be to solely focus on a quantitative risk assessment that requires extensive historical data and precise financial valuations for every potential loss. This is often impractical in a dynamic enterprise network environment where precise financial impact of a cyber event can be difficult to quantify accurately and in a timely manner. This approach risks delaying the assessment process indefinitely, failing to provide actionable insights, and potentially violating the spirit of regulations that mandate timely risk identification and mitigation. Another incorrect approach would be to conduct a purely compliance-driven assessment, focusing only on meeting minimum regulatory requirements without considering the organization's unique threat landscape and specific business objectives. This can lead to a false sense of security, as meeting baseline compliance does not guarantee adequate protection against sophisticated or novel threats. This approach fails to uphold the ethical obligation to protect the organization's assets and data beyond the bare minimum, potentially leaving critical vulnerabilities unaddressed. A third incorrect approach would be to rely on anecdotal evidence and ad hoc threat identification without a structured framework. This method is highly subjective, prone to bias, and unlikely to provide a consistent or comprehensive view of the risk posture. It fails to establish a repeatable and defensible risk assessment process, which is a cornerstone of good governance and regulatory compliance. Such an approach could lead to significant oversight of critical risks, with severe ethical and regulatory repercussions. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach risk assessment by first understanding the organization's critical assets and business processes. They should then select a methodology that is appropriate for the organization's size, complexity, and risk appetite. A phased approach, starting with a qualitative assessment to identify high-priority risks, followed by more detailed quantitative analysis where necessary and feasible, is often the most effective. Continuous monitoring and periodic reassessment are crucial to adapt to evolving threats and organizational changes. This iterative process ensures that risk management remains a dynamic and effective component of the overall security strategy, fulfilling both regulatory obligations and ethical responsibilities. Question 6. The performance metrics show a significant increase in latency and packet loss across the core network segments, impacting user access to critical business applications. The network operations team is under pressure to restore full functionality immediately. Which of the following actions best balances the need for rapid resolution with adherence to established operational best practices and potential regulatory considerations? Option A. Begin a systematic analysis of the performance metrics, comparing them against historical baselines, and consulting the network's documented troubleshooting procedures to identify the most probable cause before implementing any corrective actions. Option B. Perform a full network-wide rollback of all recent configuration changes without further investigation, assuming a recent deployment is the cause. Option C. Initiate a series of unannounced configuration changes on key network devices, based on the most recent observed symptoms, to attempt to isolate and resolve the issue quickly. Option D. Immediately escalate the issue to senior engineering staff, providing a detailed summary of the observed metrics and requesting guidance on the next steps according to the documented incident response plan. The correct answer is C. Initiate a series of unannounced configuration changes on key network devices, based on the most recent observed symptoms, to attempt to isolate and resolve the issue quickly. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise network management, balancing the need for rapid troubleshooting with the imperative to adhere to established operational procedures and regulatory compliance. The professional challenge lies in quickly identifying the root cause of performance degradation without introducing further instability or violating security protocols, which could have significant financial and reputational consequences. The pressure to restore service quickly can tempt individuals to bypass standard diagnostic steps, potentially leading to misdiagnosis and exacerbating the problem. The correct approach, which involves systematically analyzing performance metrics against established baselines and documented troubleshooting procedures, represents best professional practice because it is grounded in a methodical and evidence-based methodology. This aligns with the principles of good network governance and operational integrity, ensuring that actions taken are justifiable and repeatable. By adhering to documented procedures, network engineers demonstrate due diligence and maintain an auditable trail of their diagnostic efforts, which is crucial for compliance and post-incident review. This systematic approach minimizes the risk of introducing new issues and ensures that the resolution is robust and sustainable. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate, unverified changes based on anecdotal evidence or incomplete data poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. Such actions could violate data privacy regulations if sensitive information is inadvertently exposed or mishandled during hasty interventions. Ethically, it represents a failure to exercise due care and diligence, potentially leading to service disruption for a wider user base or compromising the integrity of the network infrastructure. Furthermore, bypassing established change control processes, even in an emergency, can be a direct violation of internal policies and potentially external compliance frameworks that mandate documented and approved modifications to critical systems. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a tiered approach. First, acknowledge the urgency and the impact of the performance degradation. Second, consult available, verified performance metrics and logs to establish a factual basis for the problem. Third, refer to documented troubleshooting guides and escalation procedures. Fourth, if immediate action is required and deviates from standard procedure, ensure that any such deviation is clearly documented, justified, and if possible, approved by a supervisor or designated authority, with a plan for immediate rollback if the intervention proves ineffective or detrimental. This structured decision-making process ensures that, while speed is considered, it is not at the expense of accuracy, security, or compliance. Question 7. Operational review demonstrates that the enterprise network has seen a significant increase in the adoption of various cloud-based software as a service, SaaS, applications by different departments, often without formal IT security approval or a comprehensive risk assessment. This rapid, decentralized adoption has led to concerns about data security, compliance, and potential shadow IT risks. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation to ensure ongoing network security and compliance? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive post-deployment vulnerability scan of all identified cloud services to detect and remediate any security weaknesses. Option B. Rely on the security certifications provided by the SaaS vendors and assume their services meet the organization's security requirements. Option C. Develop a policy that prohibits the use of any new cloud services without explicit, written approval from the Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, for each individual service. Option D. Implement a mandatory pre-deployment risk assessment process for all new cloud service acquisitions, integrating security reviews into the existing IT procurement and change management workflows, and establishing clear guidelines for acceptable cloud service usage. The correct answer is D. Implement a mandatory pre-deployment risk assessment process for all new cloud service acquisitions, integrating security reviews into the existing IT procurement and change management workflows, and establishing clear guidelines for acceptable cloud service usage. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining robust network security and enabling efficient business operations. The rapid adoption of new cloud services, while beneficial for agility, introduces a significant risk surface that may not be fully understood or controlled by the existing risk assessment framework. The challenge lies in balancing the need for comprehensive risk identification and mitigation with the imperative to support business innovation and productivity. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the risk assessment process is both thorough and practical, avoiding overly burdensome controls that stifle progress, while also preventing the acceptance of unacceptable risks. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the evolving threat landscape and the dynamic nature of enterprise networks. By mandating a proactive and iterative risk assessment process that integrates with the change management lifecycle, it ensures that new technologies and services are evaluated for security implications before they are fully deployed or become deeply embedded. This aligns with the principles of security by design and defense in depth, which are foundational to maintaining a secure and resilient network infrastructure. Regulatory frameworks, while not explicitly detailed here due to the exam's focus on general principles, implicitly support such proactive measures by requiring organizations to manage risks effectively and maintain appropriate security controls. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on post-deployment vulnerability scanning fails to meet professional standards. This is because it is reactive rather than proactive. By the time vulnerabilities are detected, the service may already be in widespread use, making remediation more complex, costly, and disruptive. This approach also risks overlooking architectural or configuration flaws that are not easily detectable by scanning alone, potentially leaving the organization exposed to sophisticated threats. Demonstrates a failure to implement a robust risk management program that identifies and mitigates risks early in the lifecycle. Another incorrect approach, which relies exclusively on vendor security certifications without independent verification, is also professionally unacceptable. While vendor certifications indicate a level of adherence to certain standards, they do not guarantee that the specific implementation within the enterprise environment is secure. The responsibility for ensuring the security of the network ultimately rests with the organization. Relying solely on third-party assurances without due diligence can lead to a false sense of security and a failure to identify unique risks introduced by the organization's specific deployment and usage patterns. This can be seen as a dereliction of the duty of care to protect organizational assets and data. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured, risk-based methodology. This begins with identifying all assets and services, including newly adopted cloud solutions. Next, potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with these assets and services must be identified. The likelihood and impact of these threats materializing should then be assessed to determine the overall risk level. Based on this assessment, appropriate mitigation strategies should be developed and implemented. Crucially, this process should be iterative and integrated with ongoing monitoring and change management activities to ensure that the risk posture remains current and effective. Professionals must prioritize actions based on the severity of the risk and the feasibility of mitigation, always striving for a balance between security and operational efficiency. Question 8. The efficiency study reveals that a significant number of remote users are experiencing intermittent connectivity to enterprise resources. The IT team is tasked with resolving this issue promptly. Which of the following troubleshooting approaches best aligns with professional best practices for network diagnostics and service restoration in an enterprise environment? Option A. Immediately begin reconfiguring firewall rules and VPN tunnel settings, as these are common points of failure for remote access. Option B. Rely solely on automated network monitoring tools to identify the root cause and apply their suggested fixes without manual verification. Option C. Prioritize a quick fix by rebooting all network devices in the path, without documenting the issue or the steps taken. Option D. Systematically investigate the network path from the remote user to the resource, starting with physical connectivity and IP layer diagnostics, before proceeding to higher-level services. The correct answer is A. Immediately begin reconfiguring firewall rules and VPN tunnel settings, as these are common points of failure for remote access. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals that the enterprise network's unified access infrastructure is experiencing intermittent connectivity issues affecting a significant portion of remote users. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly impacts user productivity and potentially business operations, requiring a swift and accurate resolution. The pressure to restore service quickly can lead to hasty decisions that might overlook critical security or compliance requirements. The correct approach involves a systematic, layered troubleshooting methodology, starting with the most fundamental network layers and progressively moving up. This aligns with best professional practices for network diagnostics, ensuring that all potential causes are investigated thoroughly before implementing solutions. Specifically, this approach adheres to the principles of network engineering and IT service management, which emphasize methodical problem-solving to minimize disruption and prevent recurrence. It also implicitly supports the regulatory expectation of maintaining a secure and reliable network infrastructure, as mandated by general IT governance frameworks that underpin enterprise operations. An incorrect approach that immediately jumps to reconfiguring complex security policies without verifying basic network health, e.g., physical layer issues, IP addressing, DNS resolution, is professionally unacceptable. This bypasses essential diagnostic steps, potentially masking underlying problems and leading to misconfigurations that could introduce new vulnerabilities or further disrupt service. Such an approach fails to meet the professional standard of due diligence in network troubleshooting and could violate implicit regulatory requirements for network availability and security by introducing unnecessary risk. Another incorrect approach might be to solely rely on automated diagnostic tools without human oversight and interpretation. Tools are valuable. They can sometimes provide misleading data or fail to identify nuanced issues. Over-reliance on automation without expert analysis can lead to incorrect diagnoses and ineffective solutions, potentially violating the professional duty to provide competent and thorough service. This also risks overlooking security implications that automated tools might not flag. Finally, an approach that prioritizes speed over thoroughness, such as implementing a quick fix without documenting the problem or the solution, is also professionally unsound. This lack of documentation hinders future troubleshooting, knowledge sharing, and compliance audits. It represents a failure to adhere to professional standards of record keeping and can lead to repeated issues, impacting the overall reliability and security posture of the network, which could have regulatory implications if audits reveal a pattern of poor network management. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Clearly defining the problem and its impact. 2. Establishing a troubleshooting plan based on established methodologies, e.g., OSI model. 3. Executing the plan systematically, documenting each step and observation. 4. Analyzing findings to identify the root cause. 5. Implementing a solution, testing thoroughly and documenting the resolution. 6. Monitoring the system post-resolution to ensure stability. This structured approach ensures that solutions are effective, secure, and compliant. Question 9. During the evaluation of a new enterprise network unified access solution implementation, a key concern arises regarding the onboarding of a large influx of diverse endpoint devices, including corporate-issued laptops, employee-owned mobile devices, and EOT sensors. The IT security team needs to ensure that all these devices can access necessary network resources while maintaining a strong security posture and adhering to internal access control policies. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of unified access and robust security for this scenario? Option A. Implement a phased onboarding process that includes automated device profiling, security posture assessment against predefined compliance policies, and dynamic assignment of network access based on user roles and device compliance status. Option B. Grant all new devices immediate, unrestricted network access upon connection to the network, with a plan to address any security issues retrospectively as they are identified. Option C. Deploy a broad network access policy that allows all devices to connect to a single, unsegmented network segment, relying solely on user authentication for access control. Option D. Manually vet each new device and its user before granting any level of network access, prioritizing devices based on perceived user importance. The correct answer is A. Implement a phased onboarding process that includes automated device profiling, security posture assessment against predefined compliance policies, and dynamic assignment of network access based on user roles and device compliance status. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for network access with the long-term security and compliance implications of a unified access solution. The challenge lies in identifying the most robust and compliant method for integrating new devices without compromising existing security postures or violating the principles of least privilege and secure network segmentation, all within the context of the 500-451 Enterprise Network Unified Access Essentials, exams, implied regulatory framework, which, for the purpose of this exam, you will assume aligns with common industry best practices and general data protection principles without specifying a particular jurisdiction's explicit laws, as the exam itself does not mandate a specific jurisdiction. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a phased, policy-driven integration that ensures all devices meet predefined security benchmarks before gaining full network access. This aligns with the core tenets of unified access: consistent policy enforcement, granular access control, and continuous security monitoring. By establishing a clear onboarding process that includes device profiling, posture assessment, and role-based access control, the organization minimizes the attack surface and ensures that only authorized and compliant devices can access sensitive resources. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining network integrity and preventing unauthorized access, which are fundamental to secure network operations. An incorrect approach that bypasses or inadequately performs device profiling and posture assessment introduces significant security risks. Failing to verify device health, e.g., up-to-date antivirus patched operating system, before granting access can lead to the introduction of malware or compromised devices onto the network, potentially spreading laterally and impacting critical systems. This violates the principle of least privilege and can be seen as a failure to implement reasonable security controls, which could have regulatory implications if data breaches occur as a result. Another incorrect approach that grants broad, unrestricted access to all new devices without proper segmentation or role assignment is equally problematic. This creates a flat network environment where a compromised device can easily access any other resource, regardless of its sensitivity. This lack of granular control is a direct contravention of secure network design principles and significantly increases the risk of data exfiltration or unauthorized modification. Ethically and professionally, this demonstrates a disregard for data protection and network security best practices. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, followed by the design and implementation of a security architecture that enforces policy consistently across all access points. This includes defining clear security policies, selecting appropriate technologies for device profiling and posture assessment, and implementing robust authentication and authorization mechanisms. Continuous monitoring and auditing of access logs are also essential to detect and respond to any anomalies or policy violations. The decision-making framework should always prioritize security and compliance, even if it requires a more deliberate and structured onboarding process. Question 10. The efficiency study reveals that a significant number of users are reporting intermittent access to critical internal applications hosted on the enterprise network. Network monitoring tools indicate occasional spikes in latency and packet loss, but the source of these anomalies is not immediately apparent. Which of the following diagnostic and resolution strategies best aligns with professional best practices for enterprise network unified access management? Option A. Initiate a comprehensive review of network device configurations, traffic flow patterns, and system logs across the relevant network segments to pinpoint the root cause of the intermittent connectivity issues before implementing any changes. Option B. Focus solely on increasing bandwidth allocation to the affected segments, assuming that network congestion is the primary driver of the latency and packet loss. Option C. Temporarily disable security features like intrusion prevention systems, IPS, and firewalls on the affected network segments to see if performance improves, with the intention of re-enabling them later. Option D. Immediately begin replacing network interface cards, NIC, on user workstations and core network switches, as hardware failures are often the culprit for such symptoms. The correct answer is A. Initiate a comprehensive review of network device configurations, traffic flow patterns, and system logs across the relevant network segments to pinpoint the root cause of the intermittent connectivity issues before implementing any changes. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals that the enterprise network's unified access infrastructure is experiencing intermittent connectivity issues impacting user productivity and critical business operations. This scenario is professionally challenging because network engineers must balance immediate problem resolution with long-term strategic goals, ensuring compliance with internal policies and potentially external service level agreements, SLAs, without introducing new vulnerabilities or violating established best practices. The pressure to restore service quickly can lead to hasty decisions that overlook crucial security or scalability considerations. The correct approach involves a systematic, data-driven troubleshooting methodology. This includes analyzing network logs, monitoring traffic patterns, and correlating events across different network components. The focus should be on identifying the root cause of the intermittent connectivity, whether it's a configuration error, hardware malfunction, or a performance bottleneck. Implementing a solution that addresses the identified root cause, followed by thorough testing and validation, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principles of network resilience and operational excellence, ensuring that the fix is robust and sustainable. Adhering to documented change management procedures and security protocols during the implementation phase is paramount to prevent further disruption or security breaches. An incorrect approach would be to immediately replace hardware components without a thorough diagnostic process. This is professionally unacceptable as it is a costly and time-consuming solution that may not address the actual problem, leading to wasted resources and continued user impact. It bypasses the critical step of root cause analysis, which is a fundamental tenet of effective network management. Another incorrect approach is to implement a quick workaround, such as disabling a security feature or bypassing a critical network service, without a clear plan for a permanent fix and proper risk assessment. This creates a significant security vulnerability and technical debt, violating the principle of maintaining a secure and stable network environment. Furthermore, failing to document the troubleshooting steps and the implemented solution is a failure in professional accountability and knowledge sharing, hindering future problem-solving efforts and potentially violating audit requirements. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that prioritizes data collection and analysis. This involves clearly defining the problem, gathering relevant information, formulating hypotheses, testing those hypotheses systematically, and implementing the most effective solution. This process should always be guided by established network engineering principles, security best practices, and organizational policies. When faced with urgency, it is crucial to maintain a disciplined approach, balancing speed with thoroughness and risk management. Question 11. Benchmark analysis indicates that a critical network service outage is impacting multiple departments, and immediate restoration is paramount. While investigating the root cause, a temporary workaround has been identified that could restore service within minutes. However, this workaround involves temporarily bypassing a specific security policy that is designed to prevent unauthorized access to sensitive data segments. The IT team is under immense pressure to resolve the issue quickly, which approach best balances the immediate need for service restoration with long-term security and compliance best practices. Option A. Grant elevated access privileges to a select group of users who are experiencing the most critical impact, allowing them to bypass the affected security controls until the issue is resolved. Option B. Inform senior management that the security policy is the cause of the outage and recommend its permanent removal to ensure uninterrupted service, deferring any further investigation into the root cause. Option C. Immediately disable the security policy entirely to ensure full network access and prevent any further disruption, with the intention of re-enabling it once the root cause is fully understood and resolved. Option D. Implement the temporary workaround, meticulously documenting the bypass security policy, the exact configuration changes made, the expected duration of the workaround, and a clear rollback plan. Simultaneously, escalate the issue to the security team and begin development of a permanent fix. The correct answer is D. Implement the temporary workaround, meticulously documenting the bypass security policy, the exact configuration changes made, the expected duration of the workaround, and a clear rollback plan. Simultaneously, escalate the issue to the security team and begin development of a permanent fix. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for network access with the long-term implications of security vulnerabilities and compliance. The organization is under pressure to restore service quickly, which can lead to rushed decisions that bypass established security protocols. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen solution is not only effective in the short term, but also sustainable and compliant with relevant regulations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough risk assessment and the implementation of a temporary, documented solution that minimizes exposure while a permanent fix is developed. This aligns with the principles of responsible network management and security. By adhering to established change management processes, even for temporary measures, the organization demonstrates a commitment to maintaining a secure and auditable network environment. This proactive stance helps prevent future incidents and ensures that all actions are traceable and justifiable, which is crucial for regulatory compliance and internal governance. An incorrect approach that involves granting broad, unmonitored access without a clear rollback plan or security controls represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It directly violates the principle of least privilege, potentially exposing sensitive data to unauthorized access. Such an action could lead to data breaches, reputational damage, and severe penalties under data protection regulations. Furthermore, bypassing documented procedures for emergency access creates an environment where security is compromised and accountability is diminished, making it difficult to investigate incidents or demonstrate due diligence to auditors or regulators. Another incorrect approach, which involves disabling critical security features to restore access, is equally problematic. This action directly undermines the organization's security posture, leaving the network vulnerable to a wide range of threats. Ethically, it is a dereliction of duty to intentionally weaken security controls, as it places the organization and its users at increased risk. From a regulatory standpoint, this could be seen as gross negligence, especially if it leads to a security incident. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of the interconnectedness of network access and security, and a failure to prioritize the protection of information assets. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured incident response framework. First, assess the impact and scope of the outage. Second, identify potential solutions, evaluating each for its security implications, compliance risks, and operational effectiveness. Third, prioritize solutions that offer the best balance of rapid restoration and minimal risk. Fourth, document all decisions, actions taken, and the rationale behind them, including any temporary workarounds and their associated risks. Fifth, establish a clear timeline for implementing a permanent solution and decommissioning any temporary measures. Finally, conduct a post-incident review to identify lessons learned and improve future incident response capabilities. Question 12. Regulatory review indicates that a large enterprise is planning to implement a new unified access control policy across its entire network infrastructure to enhance security and comply with evolving data protection mandates. Given the complexity and diversity of the existing network environment, which approach to policy deployment best balances security objectives with operational continuity and regulatory adherence? Option A. Prioritize the deployment of the policy only on devices handling the most sensitive data, deferring implementation on less critical segments. Option B. Implement the new policy exclusively on newly acquired network devices and user endpoints, leaving existing infrastructure unchanged. Option C. Immediate, full-scale deployment of the new policy across all network devices and user segments simultaneously to ensure uniform application. Option D. A phased rollout, starting with a pilot deployment in a non-critical network segment, followed by iterative expansion based on successful validation and feedback. The correct answer is D. A phased rollout, starting with a pilot deployment in a non-critical network segment, followed by iterative expansion based on successful validation and feedback. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise network management, where a new security policy needs to be implemented across a diverse set of network devices. The challenge lies in balancing the need for robust security, as mandated by regulatory frameworks, with the operational realities of maintaining network uptime and user productivity. The organization must ensure that the implementation process itself does not introduce vulnerabilities or disrupt critical business functions, which could lead to regulatory noncompliance and financial penalties. The rapid pace of technological change and the evolving threat landscape further complicate this, requiring a proactive and adaptable approach to policy deployment. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased rollout strategy, beginning with a pilot deployment in a non-critical segment of the network. This allows for thorough testing and validation of the new unified access policy against a representative sample of devices and user groups. It enables the identification and remediation of any compatibility issues, configuration errors, or unintended consequences before a full-scale deployment. This methodology aligns with best practices for change management and risk mitigation, ensuring that the organization adheres to its security obligations without jeopardizing operational continuity. By gathering feedback and performance data from the pilot, the organization can refine the policy and deployment plan, thereby minimizing the risk of widespread disruption and ensuring compliance with the spirit and letter of relevant regulations, such as those pertaining to data protection and network integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the policy across the entire network simultaneously without prior testing is a high-risk strategy. This approach fails to account for potential unforeseen issues that could arise from the diversity of devices, operating systems, and user configurations within the enterprise. Such a failure could lead to widespread network outages, compromising business operations and potentially violating service-level agreements or data availability requirements stipulated by regulations. Deploying the policy only to new devices and leaving existing infrastructure unaddressed creates a significant security gap. Selective implementation results in an inconsistent security posture across the network, leaving older or legacy systems vulnerable to exploits that the new policy is designed to prevent. This inconsistency directly contravenes the principle of comprehensive security coverage expected by regulatory bodies, which often mandate a uniform standard of protection across all network assets. Focusing solely on technical implementation without considering user impact or providing adequate training is also a flawed approach. While technically sound, a policy that users do not understand or cannot effectively work with will likely lead to workarounds that undermine security. This can result in accidental noncompliance and increased security risks, as users may bypass controls to perform their duties, thereby failing to meet the expected level of security diligence required by regulatory frameworks. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based iterative approach to network policy deployment. This involves 1. Understanding the regulatory landscape. Identify all applicable regulations and guidelines that dictate security and access control requirements. 2. Conducting a thorough network audit. Assess the current state of the network, including device inventory, configurations, and user access patterns. 3. Developing a phased deployment plan. Prioritize critical systems and sensitive data and plan for a gradual rollout starting with pilot groups. 4. Implementing robust testing and validation. Use the pilot phase to identify and resolve any technical or operational issues. 5. Establishing clear communication and training protocols. Ensure all stakeholders, especially end users, understand the new policy and their responsibilities. 6. Continuous monitoring and refinement. Regularly review the effectiveness of the policy and make adjustments as needed to maintain compliance and security. Question 13. The risk matrix shows a high likelihood of unauthorized access to sensitive enterprise data due to a recent increase in phishing attempts targeting remote employees. Which of the following strategies best addresses this risk while maintaining operational efficiency and user experience? Option A. Mandate a VPN connection for all access to internal network resources, regardless of data sensitivity. Option B. Focus solely on increasing the sensitivity of intrusion detection systems to flag suspicious network traffic. Option C. Implement enhanced endpoint security with advanced threat detection. Deploy robust multi-factor authentication for all access points, and conduct regular, engaging security awareness training. Option D. Block all incoming email attachments from external sources to prevent malware delivery. The correct answer is C. Implement enhanced endpoint security with advanced threat detection. Deploy robust multi-factor authentication for all access points, and conduct regular, engaging security awareness training. Explanation. The risk matrix shows a high likelihood of unauthorized access to sensitive enterprise data due to a recent increase in phishing attempts targeting remote employees. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing security imperatives with user experience and operational efficiency. A hasty or overly restrictive security policy could alienate users, hinder productivity, and lead to workarounds that create new vulnerabilities. Conversely, an insufficient response could result in a significant data breach, with severe financial and reputational consequences and potential regulatory penalties. The correct approach involves implementing a multi-layered security strategy that addresses the identified threat vector while minimizing user friction. This includes enhancing endpoint security with advanced threat detection, deploying robust multi-factor authentication, MFA, for all access points, and conducting regular, engaging security awareness training that educates employees on identifying and reporting phishing attempts. This approach aligns with best practices for unified access, emphasizing proactive defense and user education. It also implicitly supports regulatory compliance by demonstrating due diligence in protecting sensitive data, a core tenet of many data protection frameworks. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on blocking all external email attachments without considering the impact on legitimate business communication. This is professionally unacceptable because it fails to account for the operational needs of the enterprise and could disrupt critical workflows. It also represents a failure in risk management by not exploring more nuanced solutions. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a blanket VPN requirement for all internal resources, regardless of sensitivity or access location. This is professionally unsound, as it imposes unnecessary complexity and potential performance issues for users accessing non-sensitive internal applications, leading to user frustration and potential circumvention of security controls. Lastly, a purely reactive approach of simply increasing firewall rules after an incident, without addressing the root cause of user susceptibility to phishing, is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a lack of proactive security posture and a failure to meet the duty of care to protect data. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with a thorough understanding of the threat landscape and its potential impact. This involves assessing the effectiveness and usability of various security controls, considering the specific context of the enterprise's operations and user base. The process should prioritize solutions that offer the best balance of security, usability, and cost-effectiveness, while also ensuring alignment with relevant regulatory requirements and industry best practices. Continuous monitoring and adaptation of security measures are crucial to maintain an effective defense against evolving threats. Question 14. Risk assessment procedures indicate that the current unified access control policies for the enterprise network are not being reviewed or updated with sufficient regularity, leading to potential overprovisioning of privileges and an increased attack surface. Which of the following approaches best addresses this identified risk? Option A. Implement a continuous monitoring system that flags any access privilege changes and triggers an automated review process for any deviations from established baseline roles, coupled with a mandatory quarterly access review by department heads. Option B. Rely on individual users to report any perceived overprovisioning of their access rights to the IT security team on an as-needed basis. Option C. Deactivate all user accounts that have not logged in for more than 90 days without a formal review of their historical access needs. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive audit of all current access privileges only when a security incident involving unauthorized access is reported. The correct answer is A. Implement a continuous monitoring system that flags any access privilege changes and triggers an automated review process for any deviations from established baseline roles, coupled with a mandatory quarterly access review by department heads. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise network security, balancing the need for robust access control with the operational realities of a dynamic business environment. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that security policies, particularly those related to unified access, remain effective and compliant without unduly hindering legitimate business operations or introducing new vulnerabilities. The core of the problem is evaluating different approaches to managing access privileges in a way that aligns with best practices and regulatory expectations for network security. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, risk-based methodology for evaluating and refining access controls. This involves regular audits, continuous monitoring, and a clear process for granting, reviewing, and revoking access. Such an approach directly addresses the principle of least privilege, a cornerstone of modern cybersecurity, and ensures that access is granted only to the extent necessary for an individual to perform their job functions. This proactive stance minimizes the attack surface and reduces the likelihood of unauthorized access or data breaches, aligning with the overarching goal of maintaining a secure and compliant network infrastructure. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on reactive measures, such as only updating access controls after an incident, fails to meet professional standards. This reactive stance is a significant regulatory and ethical failure because it demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for proactive risk management. It leaves the organization vulnerable to known or emerging threats for extended periods, potentially violating data protection regulations that mandate reasonable security measures. Another incorrect approach that relies on ad hoc adjustments without a documented policy or audit trail is equally problematic. This lack of standardization and oversight creates inconsistencies in security posture, increases the risk of human error, and makes it impossible to demonstrate compliance during an audit. It also fails to uphold the ethical responsibility to maintain a secure environment for sensitive data. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This framework should include identifying critical assets, understanding potential threats and vulnerabilities, evaluating the likelihood and impact of security incidents, and then implementing appropriate controls. For access management, this translates to defining clear roles and responsibilities, establishing granular access policies, implementing strong authentication mechanisms, and conducting regular reviews and audits of access privileges. Professionals must also stay informed about evolving threats and regulatory requirements to adapt their security strategies accordingly. Question 15. Implementation of a comprehensive network access control (NAC) strategy for a hybrid workforce, encompassing both corporate-issued and personal BYOD devices, is critical for maintaining enterprise security and compliance. Given the diverse endpoint landscape and the need for granular access policies, which of the following approaches best addresses the challenges of unified access while adhering to industry best practices for network security and data protection? Option A. Granting unrestricted network access to all BYOD devices upon connection, with security measures only applied to corporate-issued endpoints. Option B. Relying on basic MAC address filtering to identify and permit known devices, while allowing all other devices to connect with minimal restrictions. Option C. Implementing a NAC solution that performs device profiling, posture assessment, and enforces dynamic, role-based access policies for all connecting endpoints. Option D. Disabling all access control mechanisms for BYOD devices to ensure seamless user experience and productivity, with security audits performed retrospectively. The correct answer is C. Implementing a NAC solution that performs device profiling, posture assessment, and enforces dynamic, role-based access policies for all connecting endpoints. Explanation. The scenario presents a common implementation challenge in enterprise network unified access, ensuring secure and compliant access for a diverse range of endpoints, including BYOD devices, without compromising network integrity or user privacy. The challenge is amplified by the need to adhere strictly to the regulatory framework relevant to the exam's jurisdiction, which for 500-451 Enterprise Network Unified Access Essentials implies a focus on general best practices and common industry standards that would be applicable in most regulated environments, without specifying a particular country's laws unless explicitly stated. The professional challenge lies in balancing security requirements with user experience and operational efficiency, all while maintaining a posture of compliance. The correct approach involves implementing a robust network access control (NAC) solution that leverages device profiling, posture assessment, and granular policy enforcement. This method represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the core requirements of unified access, identifying and authenticating all connecting devices, assessing their security posture, e.g., up-to-date patches, antivirus status, and granting access based on predefined, least privilege policies. This aligns with the overarching goal of maintaining a secure and compliant network by preventing unauthorized or non-compliant devices from accessing sensitive resources. It also supports the principle of operational efficiency by automating access decisions and reducing manual intervention. An incorrect approach that relies solely on basic MAC address filtering is professionally unacceptable due to significant regulatory and ethical failures. MAC addresses are easily spoofed, offering a false sense of security and failing to meet the due diligence expected in a regulated environment to protect sensitive data. This approach would likely violate principles of data protection and network security, potentially leading to breaches and noncompliance with data handling regulations. Another incorrect approach that involves granting broad network access to all BYOD devices without any form of authentication or posture assessment is equally problematic. This creates a significant security vulnerability, exposing the enterprise network to malware, data exfiltration, and unauthorized access. Ethically, it fails to uphold the responsibility to protect company assets and user data. From a regulatory standpoint, such a lax security posture would almost certainly fall short of compliance requirements for data security and risk management. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes user convenience over security by disabling all access controls for BYOD devices would also be professionally unacceptable. While seemingly user-friendly, this approach completely undermines the purpose of unified access control and creates a direct pathway for security threats. It demonstrates a failure to understand and implement fundamental security principles, leading to potential regulatory violations related to data security and incident response. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, understanding the organization's security policies and regulatory obligations, and evaluating available technologies against these requirements. Professionals must prioritize solutions that offer comprehensive visibility, granular control, and automated enforcement. The decision-making framework should always begin with identifying critical assets and data, understanding potential threats, and then selecting controls that effectively mitigate those risks while remaining compliant with relevant frameworks and ethical standards. Question 16. Governance review demonstrates that a new branch office's network infrastructure was brought online rapidly to meet business demands, but initial security configurations were deferred. The unified access solution is in place, but the immediate priority was establishing basic connectivity. What is the most professionally responsible approach to ensure both operational continuity and regulatory compliance for this new branch office's network access? Option A. Prioritize the secure configuration of the unified access solution, including network segmentation, robust authentication e.g. 802.1x, and device posture assessment before granting any network access to the new branch office. Option B. Enable basic network connectivity for all devices, focusing on device registration within the unified access system, but deferring detailed security posture checks and policy enforcement until after the initial operational period. Option C. Immediately implement full network access for all devices, prioritizing business operations, and address security configurations in a subsequent, less urgent phase. Option D. Establish a temporary, unauthenticated wireless network for the new branch office to provide immediate connectivity while the secure unified access solution is fully configured and validated. The correct answer is C. Immediately implement full network access for all devices, prioritizing business operations, and address security configurations in a subsequent, less urgent phase. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in enterprise network unified access, balancing the immediate need for network access with the long-term security and compliance requirements mandated by regulatory frameworks. The challenge lies in the inherent tension between rapid deployment and thorough validation. Network engineers are often pressured to bring new sites online quickly, which can lead to shortcuts in security configuration. However, failing to adhere to established security policies and regulatory guidelines can expose the organization to significant risks, including data breaches, non-compliance penalties, and reputational damage. The professional challenge is to navigate these competing demands by prioritizing security and compliance without unduly hindering business operations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation that prioritizes security policy enforcement and compliance, checks asterisk before asterisk granting full network access. This aligns with the principle of security by design and proactive risk management by first establishing secure network segmentation, implementing robust authentication mechanisms like 802.1x with appropriate radius server integration, and verifying that all devices comply with security posture assessment requirements. The organization ensures that new access points are integrated securely from the outset. This approach directly addresses the regulatory requirement to maintain a secure and compliant network infrastructure, preventing unauthorized access and potential vulnerabilities. It demonstrates a commitment to due diligence and adherence to best practices in network security management. Incorrect approach is analysis. Granting immediate, unrestricted network access to all devices upon connection, without prior security validation or policy enforcement, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach bypasses critical security controls, creating an open pathway for malware, unauthorized access, and data exfiltration. It directly violates the spirit and often the letter of security regulations that mandate controlled access and data protection. Implementing a basic, unauthenticated wireless network as a temporary measure while a more secure solution is developed is also professionally unacceptable. Seemingly a quick fix, it introduces a known vulnerability. This temporary measure, if not strictly time-bound and immediately followed by the secure implementation, becomes a persistent security gap. It demonstrates a lack of foresight and a failure to prioritize the organization's security posture, potentially leading to breaches that could have been prevented. Focusing solely on enabling basic connectivity for new devices without verifying their security posture or ensuring they are registered within the Unified Access Control System is another critical failure. This approach ignores the fundamental principle of unified access, which is to manage and secure all access points consistently. It allows potentially compromised or non-compliant devices onto the network, undermining the entire security framework and exposing the organization to risks that the unified access system is designed to mitigate. This failure to enforce security policies and maintain a unified view of network access is a direct contravention of security, best practices, and regulatory expectations for a controlled environment. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, prioritizing security and compliance throughout the implementation lifecycle. This involves 1. Understanding the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the organization's industry and jurisdiction. 2. Designing the network architecture with security and compliance as core components, not afterthoughts. 3. Implementing a phased deployment strategy that includes thorough testing and validation of security controls before granting full access. 4. Establishing clear policies and procedures for network access and device onboarding, with automated enforcement mechanisms where possible. 5. Regularly reviewing and auditing network configurations and access logs to ensure ongoing compliance and identify potential vulnerabilities. Question 17. Stakeholder feedback indicates significant user frustration with recent changes to the enterprise network's unified access security policies, citing difficulties in accessing necessary resources and a perceived decrease in productivity. As the network administrator, which of the following approaches best addresses this challenge while maintaining a secure and compliant network environment? Option A. Immediately revert all recently implemented security policies to their previous state to alleviate user concerns and restore productivity, deferring any further security enhancements until a later date. Option B. Mandate strict adherence to the new security policies without any additional user support or communication, emphasizing that security compliance is non-negotiable for all employees. Option C. Proceed with the original implementation plan without modification, assuming that users will eventually adapt to the new security measures over time. Option D. Conduct a thorough review of the implemented security policies to identify specific areas causing user friction, develop targeted user training modules for those areas, and establish a dedicated feedback channel for ongoing adjustments. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough review of the implemented security policies to identify specific areas causing user friction, develop targeted user training modules for those areas, and establish a dedicated feedback channel for ongoing adjustments. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in enterprise network unified access, balancing the need for robust security with user productivity and accessibility. Stakeholders, representing diverse departments with varying technical proficiencies and access requirements, are expressing frustration. This creates a professional challenge because network administrators must not only technically implement security policies, but also manage user expectations and ensure business operations are not unduly hindered. Failure to address this feedback effectively can lead to decreased user morale, workarounds that bypass security, and ultimately, a less secure and less efficient network. Careful judgment is required to identify the root cause of the feedback and to propose solutions that are both secure and practical. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased rollout of enhanced security measures, coupled with comprehensive user training and clear communication channels. This represents best professional practice because it acknowledges the impact of security changes on end users and proactively mitigates potential disruption. By providing training, users are empowered to understand and comply with new security protocols, reducing friction and support requests. Establishing clear communication channels allows for ongoing feedback and rapid issue resolution, fostering trust and collaboration. This aligns with the ethical responsibility of network professionals to implement secure systems that are also usable and do not create undue burdens on the organization's workforce. Furthermore, a phased approach allows for iterative refinement of policies based on real-world usage and feedback, ensuring the implemented solution is effective and sustainable. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a blanket rollback of all security enhancements without understanding the specific pain points is a regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a disregard for the initial security objectives and potentially exposes the network to vulnerabilities that were previously addressed. This approach prioritizes immediate stakeholder appeasement over long-term security posture, which is professionally irresponsible. Enforcing the new security policies without any user education or support is also a significant failure. It creates an adversarial relationship between IT and users, leading to frustration, workarounds, and a perception that security is an impediment rather than a safeguard. This approach neglects the ethical consideration of ensuring users are equipped to comply with security requirements and can lead to unintentional policy violations, which could have regulatory implications if data breaches occur due to user error. Ignoring the stakeholder feedback entirely and continuing with the original implementation plan is a direct violation of professional responsibility. It signals a lack of responsiveness to user needs and concerns, which can erode trust and lead to a breakdown in communication. This approach fails to acknowledge the human element of network security and can result in a system that is technically sound but practically unworkable, ultimately undermining the organization's security goals. Professional reasoning. When faced with stakeholder feedback regarding network access and security, professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process. First, thoroughly investigate the feedback to identify specific issues and their root causes. This involves gathering data, conducting interviews, and analyzing network logs. Second, evaluate proposed solutions against security requirements, operational impact, and user experience. Third, prioritize solutions that offer a balance between security and usability, considering a phased implementation approach. Fourth, develop a comprehensive communication and training plan to support users through any changes. Finally, establish mechanisms for ongoing feedback and continuous improvement, ensuring the network remains secure and effective. Question 18. The monitoring system demonstrates a recurring, low-severity alert indicating unusual traffic patterns to a specific server hosting a non-critical internal application. While the traffic is not indicative of a direct attack, it deviates significantly from baseline behavior. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action? Option A. Log the alert in the system's event log and continue monitoring without further immediate action, as the application is non-critical. Option B. Immediately disable the non-critical internal application to eliminate the potential for any further unusual traffic. Option C. Temporarily block all inbound traffic to the affected server until the traffic patterns normalize. Option D. Initiate the documented incident response procedure for security alerts, including initial investigation and impact assessment, while adhering to change management for any remediation steps. The correct answer is D. Initiate the documented incident response procedure for security alerts, including initial investigation and impact assessment, while adhering to change management for any remediation steps. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the monitoring system is flagging a potential security vulnerability that, if exploited, could lead to unauthorized access and data breaches, directly impacting the confidentiality and integrity of enterprise data. The challenge lies in balancing the need for immediate remediation with the potential disruption to critical business operations and the requirement to adhere to established change management processes. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that mitigates risk effectively without causing undue operational impact or violating compliance mandates. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured and documented response. By initiating a formal incident response procedure, the IT team ensures that the vulnerability is investigated thoroughly, its impact is assessed, and a controlled remediation plan is developed and executed. This aligns with the principles of robust network security and compliance frameworks that mandate incident detection, analysis, containment, eradication, and recovery. Adhering to change management processes, even during an incident, ensures that remediation efforts are documented, tested, and approved, minimizing the risk of introducing new issues. This systematic approach is crucial for maintaining audit trails and demonstrating due diligence in protecting enterprise assets. An incorrect approach that involves immediately disabling the affected service without proper assessment or authorization fails to consider the potential business impact. This could lead to significant operational disruption, affecting productivity and revenue, and may violate service-level agreements, SLAs. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of consideration for the broader business context and a failure to follow established procedures. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the alert as it is intermittent, represents a critical failure in risk management and professional responsibility. Intermittent alerts can indicate underlying instability or a stealthy attack that is not yet fully realized. Ignoring such alerts is a direct violation of the duty to protect enterprise data and systems, potentially leading to a severe security incident that could have significant financial and reputational consequences. This demonstrates a lack of proactive security posture and a disregard for potential threats. A further incorrect approach, which is to only document the alert without taking any immediate action or initiating an investigation, also fails to meet professional standards. While documentation is important, it is insufficient when a potential security vulnerability is identified. The professional obligation is to investigate and mitigate risks, not merely record their existence. This passive approach can be interpreted as negligence, especially if a breach occurs later. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a tiered approach. First, assess the severity and potential impact of the alert. Second, consult established incident response playbooks and change management policies. Third, involve relevant stakeholders to understand operational dependencies. Fourth, develop and document a remediation plan. And finally, execute the plan with proper testing and verification, ensuring all actions are logged for audit purposes. Question 19. Investigation of a newly implemented enterprise-wide unified access solution reveals that a critical security policy, intended to restrict access to sensitive financial data, is inadvertently granting broad access to a significant portion of the user base. The IT security team is under pressure to resolve this immediately, but a full rollback is complex and time-consuming. What is the most prudent immediate course of action to mitigate the risk while a permanent fix is developed? Option A. Immediately roll back the entire unified access solution to its previous state to prevent further unauthorized access. Option B. Temporarily disable the problematic policy and implement a more restrictive, albeit less granular, policy for critical resources until the original policy can be corrected and retested. Option C. Instruct all users to manually verify their access levels and report any discrepancies. Option D. Proceed with the full deployment of the unified access solution as planned, assuming the issue will be addressed in a future patch. The correct answer is B. Temporarily disable the problematic policy and implement a more restrictive, albeit less granular, policy for critical resources until the original policy can be corrected and retested. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in enterprise network unified access, ensuring consistent and secure policy enforcement across diverse endpoints and network segments without introducing unintended access or security vulnerabilities. The challenge lies in the dynamic nature of user roles, device types, and the need to adapt to evolving threat landscapes, all while adhering to strict compliance requirements. The pressure to quickly deploy a solution to address a perceived gap without thorough validation amplifies the professional risk. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased deployment and rigorous testing methodology. This aligns with best professional practices for network security and access control, emphasizing a risk-based and iterative deployment. By starting with a pilot group and a limited set of policies, the IT team can identify and rectify any misconfigurations or unintended consequences in a controlled environment. This approach minimizes the potential for widespread disruption or security breaches. Furthermore, it allows for granular validation of policy effectiveness against the defined security objectives and compliance mandates. This methodical process ensures that the unified access solution is not only functional, but also secure and compliant before a full rollout. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible network management, which are implicitly expected under general IT governance frameworks, even if not explicitly detailed in a single regulatory document for this specific exam. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a broad, untested policy across all users and devices without prior validation is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for potential security risks. Such an approach could lead to unauthorized access to sensitive data, violating data privacy regulations and internal security policies. It also exposes the organization to compliance penalties and reputational damage. Deploying the solution with a set it and forget it mentality, assuming default configurations are sufficient, is another critical failure. This neglects the ongoing need for monitoring, auditing, and updating access policies to address new threats and evolving business requirements. It can lead to policy drift and the gradual erosion of security posture, potentially violating compliance mandates that require regular review and attestation of security controls. Focusing solely on user convenience without adequately considering security implications is also professionally unacceptable. While user experience is important, it should not come at the expense of robust security. This approach risks creating security gaps that could be exploited, leading to data breaches and non-compliance with security standards. Professional reasoning. Professionals tasked with implementing unified access solutions must adopt a structured and risk-aware decision-making process. This begins with a thorough understanding of the business requirements, security objectives, and applicable regulatory frameworks. A phased approach, starting with a detailed design, followed by pilot testing, incremental deployment, and continuous monitoring, is essential. This iterative process allows for the identification and mitigation of risks at each stage. Professionals should prioritize validation of policy effectiveness and security controls before full-scale implementation. Regular auditing and review of access policies are also crucial to maintain compliance and adapt to changing environments. This disciplined approach ensures that the implemented solution is both effective and compliant, safeguarding the organization's assets and reputation. Question 20. What factors determine the most effective and secure approach for implementing a unified access solution within an enterprise network, considering the need for phased deployment and pilot testing? Option A. The extent of the initial network audit, the scope of the pilot program, and the validation of security policies against identified risks. Option B. Adherence to vendor-specific implementation guides without independent validation or risk assessment. Option C. The total cost of the proposed solution and the vendor's marketing materials. Option D. The speed at which the solution can be deployed across the entire network and the number of features advertised by the vendor. Correct answer is A. The extent of the initial network audit, the scope of the pilot program, and the validation of security policies against identified risks. Explanation. Scenario analysis. Implementing a unified access solution in an enterprise network presents significant challenges due to the inherent complexity of integrating diverse network devices, user types, and security policies. The primary challenge lies in ensuring seamless and secure access for all authorized users and devices, while maintaining compliance with evolving industry standards and internal security mandates. This requires a delicate balance between user experience, operational efficiency, and robust security posture. The need to adapt to new threats and regulatory landscapes adds a layer of dynamic complexity, demanding continuous evaluation and adjustment of the access control strategy. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a phased deployment strategy, beginning with a comprehensive network audit and risk assessment. This ensures that all existing infrastructure components, user roles, and data sensitivity levels are thoroughly understood. Following this, a pilot program with a representative subset of users and devices allows for real-world testing and validation of the unified access solution's effectiveness, security, and user impact. This iterative approach, grounded in thorough planning and testing, aligns with best practices for network security and operational stability. It minimizes disruption, allows for early identification and remediation of issues, and ensures that the final deployment meets the organization's specific security requirements and compliance obligations without introducing unforeseen vulnerabilities. This methodical process is crucial for maintaining the integrity of the enterprise network and protecting sensitive data, which are paramount in any regulated environment. Incorrect approaches analysis. A big bang deployment without prior assessment or pilot testing is professionally unacceptable because it significantly increases the risk of widespread network disruption, security breaches, and user dissatisfaction. This approach disregards the fundamental principle of risk mitigation and can lead to a failure to meet compliance requirements by introducing unknown vulnerabilities. Implementing the solution solely based on vendor recommendations without internal validation and customization is also professionally unsound. While vendors provide valuable guidance, their solutions may not fully account for an organization's unique network architecture, specific security policies, or regulatory obligations. This can result in a system that is either over-provisioned, under-secured, or non-compliant, leading to potential security gaps and regulatory violations. Focusing exclusively on cost reduction during the implementation phase, without adequately considering security implications or long-term operational needs, is a critical ethical and professional failure. This can lead to the selection of solutions that are less secure, less scalable, or more prone to failure, ultimately increasing the total cost of ownership and exposing the organization to significant risks, including data breaches and non-compliance penalties. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured, risk-based approach to implementing unified access solutions. This involves 1. Thoroughly understanding the existing environment and potential risks through audits and assessments. 2. Developing a phased implementation plan that includes pilot testing and iterative refinement. 3. Continuously evaluating the solution against security best practices and regulatory requirements. 4. Prioritizing security and compliance over short-term cost savings. 5. Ensuring adequate training and support for users and administrators. This systematic process fosters informed decision-making, minimizes potential negative impacts, and ensures the successful and secure integration of the unified access solution.